Birds fly in different directions. A Bat Family Podfic written by 24-Hour Daydreamer on AO3 and read by Hero Stories. Chapter 7. When Tim finally started coming out of the numb, fuzzy cloud of dreamless sleep that he had been floating in, he was annoyed to find that the pain had not decided to just leave while he had slept and was in fact still there. It wasn't as bad as it was the night before. That was a relief. His headache was far more manageable and truly felt more like surface pain in the healing gashes. And his ankle was only throbbing unless he tried to move his foot. But he was annoyed about its presence anyway. He opened his eyes after lying there fully conscious for an unknown amount of time, staring up at the ceiling for a while before turning his head carefully and staring at the two clocks on his nightstand, one digital and one analog. Both told the same time, but it took Tim a moment to register what that time really was. Tim sat up suddenly, letting out a small exclamation of discomfort as the pull of the door pain he had been feeling exploded into sharp pain from his head to foot, his muscles sore and tense, and his injury screaming at him for moving too quickly. He reached over to the nightstand and grabbed his phone before falling back into his pillows and flipping to the speed dial page. He grabbed his phone and put it on the speaker so he could not have to hold the phone and let it drop onto his chest so he could relax his arms. After no more than two dial tones, the call was answered. Tim, are you okay? Bruce's voice asked, but it was free of annoyance, more just slightly tied with concern. Where are you? Tim asked, his voice thick and croaky with sleep and hours of misuse. I'm at the office. What is it, Tim? Are you okay? Bruce asked, his voice growing tighter now. I cannot come home, but I'll be a minute in getting there. Alfred is home, though. Do you need... Bruce, Dad, I'm so sorry. Tim cut in, clamping his head over his eyes as his mind grew more lucid and he realized more fully why just now waking up at 1:30 had sent him into such a panic. I had four in-house investor meetings today and three on video call, and I was supposed to finalize the expense reports after the quarterly meetings, and they need to be filed before the end of the month. I'm so slow this morning. Well, afternoon now, but I might be able to get around by 3-ish. Maybe Alfred could drive me. My eye is a little swollen, so I don't think I should. Tim fell silent when he realized that there was no response to his rambling from the phone resting on his chest. Bruce? I'm still here, Timmy. I was just messaging Alfred that you're up. Bruce's voice answered, and Tim was not still under the influence of a sedative. It sounded like he was trying not to laugh. Kiddo, I want you to listen to me, okay? Tim nodded, even though he knew Bruce could not see him, but hearing his voice was comforting, and he felt okay with just lying back and listening. I took care of the commitments on your calendar through to the end of the month. You don't have any meetings. You don't have any reports to finalize. You do not have to come to the office for anything, nor are you going to. You have all the time you need to rest and get back on your feet without worrying about work. I didn't want you to worry about a cover story for your injuries, so I took care of it, okay? I took care of it. I don't want you thinking about anything except what you need at the moment. Whether that's rest, food, or making yourself comfortable, those things only, okay? And I don't want you dare spiral into making yourself feel guilty about it. You hear me? Tim huffed a laugh and nodded again. Unsure about Bruce, his words elicited the tears that were trickling from his eyes and down his temples, but he chalked it up to his usual overly emotional reaction to sedatives and painkillers. Yeah, I hear you. Good. Now, Alfred will be in soon to check on you, and I want you to eat a good breakfast. You can do that? Yeah, I can do that, Tim agreed, reaching up to wipe the tears from his eyes with the heel of his hand. And boy, I'll be home in a few hours, but someone's going to come see you long before then, okay? Who's coming up to see me? Tim asked, frowning up at the ceiling curiously as he tried to imagine who Bruce might be talking about. Someone who heard you were laid up and wanted to check on you, get some food in you, and then see if you can take a nap. I'll be home soon. Okay, son? Tim smiled and continued his pointless nods. Okay, Dad. I'll do that. Oh, hey? Yeah? Thanks for taking care of everything. No problem, kiddo. Talk to you soon. Yeah, talk to you soon. Tim picked up his phone and smiled at the fact that he had to be the one to end the call, then reached over to put his phone back on his nightstand just as a polite knock sounded at his door, binding a smile. Come on in now, I'm decent. Alfred opened the door and stepped in with a tray balanced expertly against his hip, a smile on his face and a little twinkle in his eye. Good afternoon, Master Timothy. Glad to see you awake and, for the most part, cheerful. He placed the tray on the nightstand and then reached out to pat Tim's shoulder. And, just for the records, you are never not decent, simply dressed or not dressed. Do you think you have it in you to sit up a little and eat something? Tim nodded and slowly propped himself up to his elbows. I think so. That bacon smells good. Alfred helped him slowly and carefully work his stiff body into a sitting position, flipping up the pillows to stick behind his back and head so he could settle back against the headboard comfortably. There you are, Al- Alfred said with satisfaction as he transferred the tray of food into Tim's lap. Now, I don't expect a clean plate from you, but try to eat as much as you can. And while I did make the executive decision that coffee was not the best option considering your head injuries, I did fix you some grape juice, and that thermos has hot peppermint tea, which might help your headache a little. Will that be acceptable? More than acceptable, thanks, Al, Tim said gratefully as he picked up the fork to start into the scrambled eggs, smiling at the ketchup that was squirted in uniform lines over them, even though nothing bothered Alfred's sensitivities more than ketchup on scrambled eggs. Is there anything else I can fetch for you? There's a dose of ibuprofen in that little cup, but don't take it until after you've eaten your fill, Alfred instructed as he watched Tim start to eat. Tim shook his head, chewing his mouthful and swallowing before answering, so as to not prickle Alfred's other sensibilities of the bad table manners, even if he was not currently at the table. This is great, really. I think I'm set if you need to do something else. I don't want to keep you. You aren't keeping me, Master Tim, Alfred replied, smoothing his gloved hand over Tim's sleek mussed hair. Would you like me to stay and keep you company while you eat? That's okay, Alfred. You don't need to do that. I'm sure you have other things you would rather do than watch me eat. Tim smiled up at Alfred before taking a long drink from his juice. Any of my other tasks are certainly pale second in comparison to looking after you, my boy. But if you are sure you have your meal quite in hand, I should go check up on Master Damien. Tim froze at the mention of Bruce's youngest and looked up pensively over the edge of the glass. Damien's home? Indeed, it is Saturday afternoon after all, Alfred responded, thinking as he looked around the door. Never fear, Master Tim. I will be sure that he has plenty to occupy himself, so bothering you is not on his agenda. Tim relaxed a little as Alfred closed the door, still not completely pleased with the idea that he was home with Damien in the house without Bruce anywhere around, but he was confident that Alfred would follow through on his promise. The next few hours after Tim had eaten was spent with a wireless earbud in, listening to one of his Spotify playlists and drifting in and out of dozing. During one of these drifting moments, a knock sounded at his door, but this one definitely did not sound like Alfred. It was rhythmic, almost musical, to the tune of shave and haircut 2 bits. Tim propped himself up on his elbow, grinning as the one person he knew who knocked to that tune came to mind. Dick? The door opened and revealed a tall, lithe young man in khaki joggers and a dark blue Nike shirt, with "Just Do It" on the front, with wavy black hair framing his light olive-toned face, wide bright smile, and blue eyes. Richard Grayson, the first Robin, now Nightwing by night, in training bloodhaven policeman by day, Tim's hero, and older brother, his first real friend. "Hey, Timmy," Dick greeted warmly, stepping into his room and closing the door behind him before crossing the room to lean down and plant a mushy kiss in between Tim's eyebrows. Tim sat forward a little to throw his arms around Dick's neck, grinning as he pulled himself forward, so that Dick had to sit on the edge of the bed to avoid falling forward into his little brother. "I didn't know you were in Gotham. Why didn't you text me?" "Well, 'cause I want to surprise you, that's why," Dick said, backed and cupped his face with his hand, his face growing just a little more serious. "Okay, let me see the damage here. Bruce told me you had a rough night." "Did he ask you to come and see me?" Tim asked, his tone a little tenser than he had meant it as he let Dick examine him without any argument. "No, he actually didn't know I was in town either," Dick replied, picking up on one of Tim's hands and inspecting the raw knuckles. "I stopped by a wine enterprise to surprise you both, and when he said you weren't there because of injuries, I knew I had to stop by and see you. I had the day off and actually slept decently, and I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, so I decided to drive over from Bloodhaven to spend the weekend." Tim relaxed at that and smiled, relieved that it had been by Dick's own volition that he had come to see him, and not something Bruce had needed to convince him to do. "You here for the weekend?" "If Bruce doesn't kick me to the curb tonight, then yeah." Dick grinned as he scooted up the rest of his back against the headboard of Tim's bed and draped his arm around Tim's shoulders. His arm long enough and Tim's shoulders narrow enough that he could rest a hand on the left side of Tim's chest. He pointed with the hand resting over Tim's heart toward his propped up foot. "Not broken, I'm told?" "No, not broken, just a bad sprain," Tim supplied, relaxing into his brother's side and resting his head against his chest. "A couple of stubborn goons decided it was a good handle to swing me around by." Dick chuckled, clucked his tongue, and as he winced openly. "Ouch! That stings. Why'd you let them get that close for? Isn't that why I trained you in the bow staff? To keep the baddies out there?" He emphasized the last word by waving a hand away from them. "Well, it was my staff during the fight," Tim defended, his tone slightly miffed. "And I didn't let them do anything." "Of course you didn't," Dick agreed with a grin, reached up to tweak the end of Tim's nose. "Just teasing. Bruce said were 4 of them and you were up against. Nice job on letting the odds get the best of you." Tim's smile wilted into a small frown as he laid still against Dick, the full events of the previous night coming back hard and clear. He had let it get the best of him. He hadn't had it handled. The only reason that he didn't get hurt worse was because of. "Hey, you okay?" Dick asked as he leaned forward a little to look down into Tim's face. His brow puckered in concern when he saw Tim's expression. Tim swallowed hard, unsure of how to answer. He had made up his mind that he shouldn't say anything about Jason being back in town, especially when he had not caused any disturbances, and certainly not after he had stepped in and helped him out, even if it had been with a snark here and there. He wanted to give Jason a chance, the benefit of the doubt, before making everyone hyper aware of the paranoid about his presence, even if the last time they had been together it had included Jason with a knife to his throat, spitting hateful comments and angry oaths. Hello, Officer Timmy. This is ground control speaking. Am I getting through? Tim blinked out of his thoughts as Dick tapped the end of his nose, scrunching it and looking up offendedly at Dick. Dick, would you cut that out? Dick grinned and shrugged his shoulder defensively. Hey, I'm just making sure you're still in my same dimension. Kind of drifting off there. Tim sighed and shook his head lightly. He was learning. Sorry, Dick. I didn't mean to drift on. I was just thinking. Well, in that case, a penny for your thoughts? Dick asked, squeezing Tim a little closer. A nickel, a dime. Okay, a quad, but that's my final offer. Tim smiled at Dick's personal bidding war, even chuckling a little. He had made up his mind about not telling Bruce about Jason. He just did not want to be the one responsible for that fallout. But Dick, on the other hand, Tim had always been able to confide in Dick, even before he had become Robin. He could remember loads of times when they would sneak off together during boring galas and fundraising events, sneaking snacks that Tim wasn't supposed to have, and getting into some sort of mischief that Dick always took the blame for. Their relationship had stretched a little thin when Tim started showing up at the Batcave. Understandably so, since Dick was still very much grieving the loss of another boy and was not ready to call someone else Robin in Jason's place. But Dick was still the first one to truly accept Tim and start helping him with his training, and it welcomed him with open arms when Bruce told him that Tim was to be the newest addition to the Wayne family of adopted misfits. Would Dick initially freak out? Yes. Would feel great to get this off his chest? Also, yes. Could he swear his older brother to secrecy with enough guilting and begging? Most likely. Tim took a deep breath and sat up further so he could turn and look at Dick fully. Dick, I need to tell you something, but it has to stay between us. Just us. You understand? Dick raised a brow and smirked. Can I translate that to request as don't tell Dad? Or anyone, Dick, please. Tim reached over and grabbed Dick's hand, squeezing tightly as he met Dick's gaze firmly. I need you to promise me. Dick's teasing expression faded into a serious one as he searched Tim's face and found nothing but absolute sincerity there, and maybe a little apprehension or fear. Yeah. Okay, Tim. Dick nodded, returning the firm hold on Tim's hand in a sign of surety. Just between us. I won't say anything about what you want to tell me unless you want me to. Tim let out a small sigh of relief and nodded slowly, now seeming to have to regather his courage. How much did Bruce tell you about last night? Not a terrible amount. I mean, we were in his office, so he had to keep it pretty brief and somewhat cryptic. Dick replied, not liking where this was going considering the context of his pretty beat up little brother and the fact that Tim had sworn him to silence. Okay, well, let's just say I kinda didn't have things under control with Muggers and kinda really needed backup. And I was going to call for that backup, but someone kinda stepped in before I could. Tim knew that the words that had to come out of his mouth made little to no sense, and did not really give Dick enough background to be able to piece it together either. But now that he had decided to tell someone the exact details of that night, he felt he had to do so as quickly as possible. I mean, I probably should have called Bruce right away regardless, but I was kinda slightly concussed and confused and the whole lot panicking, so I didn't. And I mean, he really didn't seem that bad. I mean, not like he was before, which totally caught me off guard. Sure, he got a little upset with me, but whoa, whoa, whoa. Dick begged, holding up his hands to stop the torrent of words bumbling out of Tim's mouth. Slow down that moment, Tim. I'm gathering that you are talking about somebody, but you kind of blew right past who. Who stepped in, who didn't seem that bad, and who got upset with you. Tim took in a shuddering breath, his hands shaking even though he was holding them clenched in his lap. Jason? Jason's back. Dick stared at him blankly for a moment with wide eyes, his mouth opening to say something and sort of getting stuck in a slightly agape position. What? Tim swallowed and tried again. Jason's back? He's back in Gotham, Dick. I saw him. I talked to him. He's the one who stepped in and knocked the last of the goons out while I was trying to piece my consciousness back together in the bottom of a dumpster. Dick reached out and grabbed both of Tim's forearms, his eyes wide with both panic and anger. Is he the one who did this to you? No, Dick, listen. Tim huffed, his eyes rolling a little. Gosh, I just told you that he stepped in and helped me. Why would he be the one to hurt me if I just said that he helped me? Well, I don't know. The last time you two were in the same proximity, he nearly slit your throat, Dick explained, looking frustrated and frantic at the same time. What did he do? What did he say? What did you say? Why was he here? If you quit yelling in my face for a second, I might be able to actually tell you, Tim snapped, purposefully leaning forward into Dick's face to make his point and to stun Dick into silence. It worked because Dick sat back a bit, loosened his bruising grip on Tim's forearms, and slid his hands down to hold Tim instead, and let his eyes close for a moment as he took a few deep breaths. Okay, he said after a moment, opening his eyes and sighing slowly through his nose. I'm sorry, I kind of freaked out for a minute there, but I'm listening. Start from the beginning, and I'll try not to interrupt you or ask questions until after you're finished. Thank you, because you are starting to stress me out. Tim sighed, forcing himself to relax his shoulders and breathe a little slower than before, starting again. I was up against it, Dick. I really was. I had taken three down of the four muggers, but I slipped up and one of the brick-headed heads landed a good one on the side of my face with a set of brass knuckles. Then his body slammed me into an empty dumpster. Tim swallowed hard, frowning as he forced the confession to come on. I didn't have things handled like Bruce thinks. I don't know what would have happened if Jason hadn't shown up, but he did. He did, and took out the last gun before he could start to do anything else to me. Non-lethally, I might add. He actually asked me if I was gay, and he followed me to the roof and caught me before I passed out and fell. He even sat with me for a while. Dick had been listening, though he had been grinding his molars to keep from interrupting Tim with one of his thousand questions. But now it was Tim's past. He swallowed and wet his lips. Then? What happened then? What did he say to you before Bruce got there to pick you up? He got mad at me for thanking him? Tim shrugged. He said he didn't do it for me. The fact I was there and that he helped me was a coincidence that he didn't want to be thanked for. Then we started arguing back and forth about the south side of town being his, and then he left. But he didn't touch you? I mean, no punches were thrown? Dick pressed, taking in Tim's extremely swollen left side of his face and feeling a small degree of shock that his wayward brother had not had anything to do with it given his track record. Tim shook his head, shrugging one shoulder. No, no punches were thrown between us. Like I said, he only touched me to making sure I didn't topple off a building head first. He might have said that he didn't actually mean to help me and I was just happening to be there, but I don't think that's true. He looked different. Different how? I don't know. Tim deadpanned as he thought back on Jason's face from the night before and the day at the coffee shop. Just different, less angry, a little more relaxed, a lot less aggressive. Towards me, I mean, I didn't really see what he did to the last mugger, and his eyes looked different too. Not as green, a bit more blue like they used to be. The two of them sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their thoughts over the self-proclaimed black sheep of the family. Finally, Tim broke the silence with his final confession. Last night wasn't the first time I saw him either. I saw him at Take a Shake a day or two ago. was in civvies, and he ordered the exact same shake as me. Tim smiled a little as he thought back on it. He offered me the first one even though he had ordered first. Dick glanced over at Tim and shifted so he was facing him more squarely. Why didn't you tell someone? Why haven't you told Bruce? Why do you not want me telling him? Because I don't want Bruce to flip his lid. You know as well as I do what a mention of Jason does to him, Tim insisted, fiddling with the edge of his blanket. And beyond that, I want to give Jason the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't started anything. He hasn't come up in any police reports or news stories. He came back to town, but he hasn't done anything. Tim, buddy, the last time he was on a rampage, and you were on his hit list, if not on the number one spot, very close to it. They insisted, Rycrack, frowning as he leaned forward a little to meet Tim's gaze. Don't you think we should all be ready just in case? If you all walk around expecting eggshells, you're going to jump at the first sound of cracking. Tim stated firmly. Nothing has happened yet. If anything, regardless of whether he wanted my thanks or not, Jason pulled my rear out of the bad situation. I don't want us all on high alert and paranoid until we've given him a chance to lay low and just be for a while. What if he's planning something? Dick asked, reaching out without diverting his gaze from Tim's to take a hold of his hand to stop Tim from picking at dry spots on his cuticles. I mean, why else would he come back after a year of the radar and radio silence? Maybe because this city is the only home Jason has ever known? Tim insisted, slightly annoyed that Dick's insistence toward the negative when he was usually such a glass full kind of guy. I don't know for sure, but I can't imagine that it's a weird way to feel the most comfortable here. Come on, Dick, work with me. What happened to innocent until proven guilty? He has been proven guilty, though, several times of several crimes, Dick insisted, throwing his hands up briefly before letting them fall back into his lap. Murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon are just few of them. Right, and people can't change? You started out unable to stand being around me, and now you're here just because you were worried about me, Tim pointed out, knowing it was a weak example given the circumstances they were discussing, but trying anyway. I am telling you, Dick, Jason was different than he was the last time we saw him, and I, for one, would prefer to think that maybe he has had the time to rein himself in and readjust to being alive. That maybe he really has changed and has come back to himself a little bit. Dick sighed in slight resignation and sat back a bit, his gaze staring a hole into the space of Tim's comforter, his eyes darting a little as he seemed to be finding his own thoughts. Dick, please. Tim's tones turned softer, more searching and peaceful. I told you because I needed someone to confide in, and I knew I could trust you. Please don't tell Bruce. Give it some time. Give Jason some time. He's your brother too, remember? That last statement was a low blow, Tim knew, but he was getting slightly desperate to invoke Dick's empathy. After a long moment of Tim panicking that he had perhaps made a wrong decision, Dick sighed heavily and nodded, smiling and reaching out to sweep Tim's hair back out of his face. You know I wouldn't do anything to protect your trust in me. I'll keep it on the down low, but only on one condition, okay? And that's if you promise that the second Jason so much as raises his voice at you or seems to be slipping back into old habits, that you go to Bruce and tell him, and that you won't put yourself in unnecessary risk or danger to save anybody's feelings. Promise? Tim grinned in relief and nodded eagerly. I will, Dick, I promise. He threw his arms around Dick's neck and pulled him into a hug. I knew I could count on you. Dick smirked and rubbed a hand down Tim's back while he used the other one to cradle the back of Tim's head. Yeah, what can I say? I have a weakness for my little bro when he decides to be all cute, lovable, and trusting. Well, at least one of those words certainly does not fit Drake. Dick pulled back from Tim and looked over his shoulder, missing the wilted, then annoyed look on Tim's face as Dick smiled at his youngest brother, leaning against the door frame, glowering at the two of them. Damie, hey little buddy! Dick exclaimed, standing up and meeting Damien where he was standing. You didn't knock, Tim pointed out flatly, furious by the burn of jealousy he felt in his chest over Dick's attention being turned on the younger boy. Damien winced as Dick wrapped his arms around him in a hug and did not bother to reciprocate at all. I heard you talking to Richard and figured it was unlikely that you were indecent. He smirked and quirked one of his dark brows. Well, more than you usually are, anyway. Dick seemed oblivious to the thick air between Tim and Damien as he knelt so that he could be closer to Damien's height, reaching up to ruffle Damien's hair. Have you been, Dames? How's school been good? Damien smoothed his hair back down and shrugged. As good as any day at a second-rate institution filled with foolish, rambling children can be. I was hoping to show you a project I've been working on. Father has encouraged me to take up drawing, and I want your opinion. Dick's smile wilted as he looked from Damien to Tim. Well, I'd love to see what you're working on, little D, but I kind of came over to spend the day with Tim since he's hurt and all. Maybe next time. It's not as if he's going anywhere. His inadequacy in the field has landed him bedridden for now, Damon pointed out, his gaze hard and cold as he stared at Tim over Dick's head. Father has expected and quite a lot of effort to make sure he had Drake's responsibilities and duties covered this morning because of it. Dick smiled and gave Damien a little jostle by the shoulder. Oh, come on, Damie. If it was you that was hurt, I would. I don't care. Dick looked over his shoulder at Tim, a slight frown across his features. What was that? I don't care if you want to go with Damien, Tim repeated with a little more clarity, doing his best to keep his expression neutral. It's been a while since you've been here. I'm sure you two have a lot to catch up on. Dick stared and looked down at Damien, then back at Tim. Are you sure? I thought we might play a video game or something together for a while. It's fine. The screen probably would make my headache worse, Tim replied flippantly, sinking back into his pillows and scooching down the bed a bit. Go on ahead. I'm going to nap. Dick smiled and allowed Damien to pull him towards the hall. Thanks, Tim. I'll come to see you in a few hours, I promise. He paused as he leaned around the door and winked. No worries, secret saver me. For now. Just remember your end of the bargain, okay? The door closed. Tim stared at it blankly, knot in his throat growing so hard that he was struggling to swallow. While Dick had been as surprised as anyone to find out about Damien, he had been quicker even than Bruce to welcome Damien into the family, even quicker than he had been to welcome Tim. Maybe it was because Damien was really young and Dick was happy that Talia had given over custody so that Damien could not be indoctrinated any further by his assassin mother, so he would bend over backwards to make Damien feel loved, valued, and wanted. And this was Dick Grayson of the Flying Graysons we are talking about. That guy could bend pretty far. That should be a good thing, admirable even, but it always made Tim feel slightly sick every time he had to see it. Tim reached over and grabbed one of his extra pillows and hugged it tightly to his chest, hoping the pressure might relieve the aching he felt around his heart. Dick came to see Tim. He had to hang on to that, even though he had been pulled away by Bruce's selfish, diabolical, biological son. He wasn't being passed up. He wasn't being set aside. He wasn't. Tim wasn't sure when the tears started, but by the time he noticed them, they were trailing down his temples and making his hairline wet. But he didn't even bother wiping them away. He had caused Bruce that much trouble moving his schedule around. Bruce hadn't even sounded mad, but what if Damien was right and Bruce had just been nice to spare his feelings? Inadequate. Replacement. Pretender. Feeling. Pathetic. Tim let out a sob, groan as he pulled the pillow over his face, ignoring the pain in his wounds as he pressed it hard over his head. Yeah, having Damien around was bad for his psyche. Having Jason around maybe was just as bad, if not worse, both. It was overall not good, and he was going to have to find a way to put on his perfectly curated "I'm fine, nothing's wrong, you haven't hurt me at all" face, so he could muster to even leave this room in the next few weeks. Him had fallen asleep shortly after he had finally stopped crying, but Dick had stopped by to see him again and left a note with hurried handwriting next to Tim's water bottle. Emergency in Bloodhaven, so no sleep over this time. Sorry, Timmy, I'll be back soon to hang out. Get better soon. Tim had crumpled up the note after reading it and buried his face into his pillow to let it swallow up a fresh onslaught of tears. Not only had Damien pulled Dick away, he had taken the rest of his time to selfish little demon brat. But it's fine. Nothing Tim hadn't dealt with before. He was used to being passed over. And that is chapter 9, 7, 7, I think. Yeah, 7 of Birds Fly in Different Directions. I hope you enjoyed it. Recording this one was a bit, well, it was done in episodes. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I can see you next week. I'm not really sure when I will have the time to record. There's some things I need to do, but I'll probably have time somewhere. I hope you enjoyed it again, and see you next week. Bye.